Yes, we can see, Prof.
Okay, okay, good. All right.
And for tomorrow session will be moderated by my friend, Prof. No? Leave bapaknya. Oh, Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Accidentally exited.
I thought there is some problem with you, Prof. So
You know, you press too many and then you get clicked out.
oh, it got hacked. Okay, just for the information, Prof. Today's session will be moderated by my friend, by my colleague.
Okay.
His name is Mr. Girindra.
All right. Who will be Mr. Indra, is it?
Girindra.
Girindra. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Prof. Syed Musa, can we start now?
Boleh Pak
Oke,
Indra.
boleh. Oke, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Salam.
Selamat pagi, selamat sejahtera kita semua. The honorable speakers for today's session, Prof. Syed Musa Al-Habsyi, and the honorable head of department, Pak Ferry, and the participants for today 3-in-1 series. Yeah. So today we have another 3-in-1 series delivered by Prof. Syed Musa. Previously, yesterday, Prof. Syed Musa delivered about Awqaf or about Wakaf, and today Prof. Musa will deliver about research methodology for Islamic economics and finance. So for today's participant, Prof, we have maybe 5th and 7th semester,
Okay.
so closer to the
Research paper.
thesis, research paper. So hopefully this discussion today will be beneficial for our student, yeah.
Okay, inshallah.
And as previous seminar or as previous meeting, we have about 1 hour for you to deliver the material, and then another 30 or 40 minutes to discuss.
For the discussion.
Okay. Yeah.
Inshallah.
And
Alright.
without further ado, the screen is yours, Prof.
Okay, let me try and share my screen. Yeah. Can you see my screen? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. The background is the same, but the title is different. Otherwise, I may get back to the previous presentation. Okay, I'll begin. Yeah, okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi washabihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah, and thank you very much to the Department of Economics, Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Brawijaya, for inviting me, and the faculty team, and Brother Dandy for continuously communicating. We hope we can do something together after this session, inshallah. If there are opportunities for research or opportunities for supervision and further discussion. Now, the topic that is being given to me, I think it has always been a challenging topic. Although I have been teaching research methodology for quite some time, but to discuss research methodology specifically for an emerging discipline like Islamic economics and finance. For some, they say, well, it's as far back as 60, so it's already almost 60 years. But I think there are also other things that we need to consider in the progress or the development of Islamic finance, all right? Maybe just a little bit of a background. The initial development were very much ideas and a lot of ideologies, a lot of ideas and ideologies on how to go about to conceive what Islamic economics is and what Islamic finance. And I'm sure for those who have attended would have gone through the history of Islamic economic thought, all right, and also understand the early developments of this field. Now, one of the challenge about doing research in this area, okay, later on I will go into some of the details, is to be able to distinguish, all right, at the same time to be part of a bigger field, all right. So if we look at finance itself, even the finance field of finance, it's not something very old, it's quite recent. I mean, we are talking about the 30s, 40s, 1930s, 40s, so it's actually quite recent. Of course, Nobel Prizes have been awarded to economists who has significantly contributed to finance, and we continue to acknowledge that. I think recently also there was already a Nobel Prize given to banking. So the direction here is, of course, innovation, and looking at the future and see how research can contribute to humanity in a broader sense. Okay, maybe I quickly go through to my outline. Now, these are some of the topics that I'm going to cover. In fact, these topics can be changing again and again, as this is a talk, and I would consider this more of a conversation, because there is nothing that has to be what we call carved on stone. It's something that we can review, and then we can come up with better suggestions. So I'm going to touch something about research paradigm, design and process, and then we'll go into this challenge that any research will have, which is how to identify your problem statement, or to make clear the problem statement. So we call it problematization, all right? But since this is the first time that most of you are doing research, all right, so I'll try to keep it as the first few steps first, all right? And then later on, maybe if we want to discuss, we can go to the next level. Because for trying to identify original contribution, the problem statement is very, very crucial. Then we may look at some research approaches, and if there's time, we look at framework and some methods and some concluding remarks. Now, let's start with the discussion about why do we do research. Okay, why do we do research? Now, for most of us, we'll say, well, I just want to know something new. Okay, I have some inquiry or inquisitive spirit. And therefore you start to search. All right, so when you keep searching again and again and again, all right, when you search again and again and again, it becomes research. Okay, so sometimes English word is quite simple, they put re and then search. That means what? You search again and again. But how do you do it again and again? Okay, now this is where the scientific method comes in. So it goes back to the question of, are you systematic in your research or in your search? And at the end of your search again and again, where does it end? Okay, when do you stop? When do you stop searching? Okay, if you have a problem at the back of your mind, all right, once you find the solution, you stop. And usually if you are doing a practical kind of research, especially consultancy, you want to solve the client's problem. So you search until you find the solution. Okay. Now, this process of research itself finally will go to something that we want to contribute, that's something we want to add, which is knowledge itself. So that's why here in this one slide, okay, you can read later in detail. I just give you some background to it. Okay. If the purpose of research is not knowledge, then what it is? Now, this is the question. Even to say I want to provide a practical solution, it actually contributes to knowledge, and that knowledge becomes expertise. So it is some form of knowledge that we got to understand. So I pick up for you some basic definitions of knowledge. And most of the time, when we talk about knowledge, we will have to go through a certain hierarchy. You will start with, for example, facts or data. All right. And then after that, you go up to the next level, which is information. And then you go up to the next level, which is knowledge. And of course, for some, you will be bestowed with wisdom. Okay. So that will be, of course, some of us will describe that as the peak of knowledge. Okay. And in philosophy, it is the love for wisdom. Basically, it is the love for wisdom. And to arrive to that wisdom, of course, you have to engage yourself with knowledge. So this is where I chose two philosophical concepts, which is epistemology, okay, which is very much focused on the study of knowledge itself or the theories of knowledge. All right. So that when you say, I'm learning something, then what you learn? How do you learn? Why do you learn? These are all the questions that you will have to ask. So for it's the same thing. We ask, why do I do research? How do I do research? All right. The same questions. So all this will bring into the discussion about epistemology. All right, here I've given you some definition. I give you some characteristics like intuition, a priori, memory, perceptual knowledge, self-knowledge, testimony. Yeah. Some of us, for example, do research using anecdotal. I mean, I just seek opinions, and then from there I will be able to figure out, put up some mental frame, mental picture, and then I can share with others what everybody's talking about. And you see that a lot in journalism, for example, in anthropological research. Now, at the same time, when we talk about knowledge itself, all right, in my last lecture, if you could recall, my first slide, I always ask three questions. What is the purpose? What is the meaning? And what is the benefit, okay, of waqaf? And you can use the same questions for anything in your life, yeah? So if you have lost sense of purpose, you will have lost sense of direction. That's why I always caution, those people who like to talk about change, who say only change is constant. Right? It sounds funny, right? Pelik, eh? Change and then constant. What they mean is a perpetual change. But my question is, in which direction? If you just change for the sake of changing, then what happens? You will move in a circle. And worse, if it is a vicious cycle and not a virtuous circle, okay, or virtuous cycle. So then we have a serious problem. So when we look at knowledge, does this knowledge bring us to goodness? Does this knowledge build our character? Does this knowledge make a better life for everyone? Now, that's where I go to some of these scholars. So I've selected Imam Ghazali, Al-Jurdani, Al-Attas, and others. And I think you can add some of Ibn Taymiyyah and so on, all right? If you are interested in Islamic economic thought, certainly you have to make reference to some of their work. Now, they have refined knowledge with a purpose, okay? And that purpose actually relates to the nature of man himself, okay? So knowledge is something very important. And for you to grow knowledge, you have to do research. And one of the problems we have today in Islamic finance is the research that we do, okay? Is the research that we do. Are we just extending the existing frontier, or are we building new frontiers? Are we just applying only? Are we just stretching the limit? So these are very, very fundamental questions. But for you, as I would say, the budding scholars, inshallah, all right, who just want to get into this knowledge stream, all right, I hope you keep yourself an open mind, all right, so that you can try to capture as much. And I'm sure you can do it much faster than me at this age. Now, when we talk about methodology, for example, okay, it is actually an analysis or study of methods. Now, methods, then we have methodology, you have methods, you have instruments, all right? If we go down by that area. So, for example, I have a methodology that looks at a positive view of things, right? Which means I have a certain view of reality, and I say, okay, this is what I want to look at. For example, traffic jam. Okay, so I say there's a problem here. There's a traffic jam problem. So everybody is giving all sorts of examples like, oh, there could be not enough road. The road has got to be made bigger. We have to reduce the number of cars. We have to use public transport and so on. But if you notice, many urban societies, having tried to solve that problem, still haven't solved that problem. So what was the problem? The problem was actually density. How concentrated people live in the area. All right, so then you reallocate in terms of time, you reallocate in terms of space. So again, I come back to time, space, and behavior. So you cannot ignore behavior, right? Because if there is no behavioral change, no matter what, we go back to the same problem. Okay, so behavioral change is very crucial. Yeah. So again, I said knowledge relates to the personality. Knowledge relates to your belief. Knowledge relates to your value. So you cannot ignore this. Yeah. Whatever knowledge you acquire. And the methodology will tell you how do you get to that knowledge. Okay. Now, here I will introduce some a bit technical terms. All right. Maybe later on you can read and discuss with your professors and look at it again. Right. Now, I've got this diagram that I just want to share with you. I prepared this diagram when I was reviewing the Islamic finance curriculum. All right, and there was a paper written, published. You know, my problem is after I publish, I forget where I put my papers. But sometimes I can search it again and then I can share with you. But this is a diagram that I want to share with you that when we look at knowledge from an integrated perspective, okay, we begin with nature. Alright, kita tengok alam. Kemudian kita lihat diri kita sendiri. And then we try to relate to nature. You see, very interestingly, we have these superheroes, you know, that has been created in comic books and so on. Always we want to conquer something. Is that what life is all about? Or is it we want to be in harmony with life? Now, this is very fundamental. If you look at the Eastern philosophy, we don't have this concept of imperialism. Yeah, because we always want to live in harmony. We're not about conquering others. Yeah, but if you look at the Western, they have some of these challenges. They always feel that they have to be superior, they have to conquer. All right. But when you look at nature, you finally nurture it. And then you have the universality. That means ideas that are shared from Adam right up to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and right up to the end. That means it's a very universal thing. Very universal. In fact, if you look at the Quran from a universal perspective, you will see so many integrating perspectives. Yeah. And then, of course, there is the nature of man himself, which is the fitrah. All right. So, what is this nature? Again, we have to go back to the very purpose of life. So, if our purpose of life is ultimate happiness, as described by Imam Ghazali, which means the ultimate happiness in the hereafter, then we are talking about dunya and akhirah. We are talking about going home. All right, like E.T. going home, you know, in that movie, E.T. going home. Where is home? Now, this is the fundamental question. Yeah. So the knowledge that we got in the concept of ilm itself is actually science. So this science now, how do we put together? Now you'll notice in our understanding when we were taught, we have the natural science, we have the social science. Yeah. The natural science, usually we observe and then it has its own laws and then we come up with the physical laws, whether physics, chemistry, biology, and so on. But then the human behavior is a different expression altogether because you are given a choice, all right? Or you are given ikhtiyar, for example, yeah, to make a better choice. Then we formalize this into formal science and then we have applied. So you can see this integrated relationship. But one thing that we cannot miss is revelation and reason, which is naqli and aqli. So the sources of revelation from Adam, right, up to Muhammad. I mean, it went through what? 313 prophets, 313 messengers, 124,000 prophets. Until today, we're still counting, all right, trying to find out who they are and how they have brought goodness to mankind and humanity. Yeah, the one that we only know as Muslim, most of us, only 25, yeah, official. But there are actually so many of them who have brought collective wisdom. So I think we should open our mind and our hearts when you do research to seek this knowledge, yeah. Now, next thing that I just want to talk at a high level first is the problem that we face, all right, in the field of Islamic finance, especially in banking. Now, for those of you who are in accounting, for example, all right, I think we'll appreciate this because the discipline of accounting did not come from theory. It came from practice. So is the discipline of medicine, So is the discipline of engineering. However, we apply the principles from, for example, engineering, you apply the principles of physics. All right. And in accounting, what do? We apply the principles in economics. And then later on, you will see in human sciences, and then later on in management and so on. But there is this practical approach to the problem. Even medicine today, right? Even medicine today, I mean, we have the COVID-19 virus, yeah? What are the evidences? We have lab evidence, we have clinical evidence, but the most important evidence is what? The mortuary, after the person died. The post-mortem evidence. Apparently, that evidence is not being shared. I hope by now we should share it and have a better understanding of the problem. All sorts of excuses were given. Because the final evidence is what you see in the human body at the end of the story. The others, even the clinical, can be situational, all right, because it has its realities. Later on, I will share with you why we have this qualitative and quantitative, yeah? Okay, now I just want to highlight to you these three areas, which also affect Islamic finance and economics. Number one is ideological or philosophical. Which views are you going to take? Now that can actually guide you to your research, yeah, in Islamic economics. Are you going to take an institutional view? Are you going to take a behavioral view? Are you going to take a political view? There's also political economics. Which view are you going to take? Yeah, then you're going to build the discipline. Then there is also the professional practice relevance. Okay, you cannot talk about a standard without talking to those who practice it. Now, this has been some of the challenges that we have in the academic world when we work exclusively from the industry. You have to relate to the industry. So, for example, when you actually go out and do your interview or survey, all right, don't just live within your academic community, just among students. If you can reach out, please do. All right, then you will be current. You will know actually, because they lead the discipline. Okay, but we are going to capture data from there to build the knowledge. Then, of course, the scientific approach. Right now, this one can be policy. This one can relate to recent developments of standards. Like yesterday, I was talking about Waqaf and we talk about governance. There's a lot of policy practice issues that you can take for your research. Okay. Now, these are some plausible, I use the word plausible, not possible, because these are the definitions that have been quoted, all right, about Islamization. Okay, maybe I give you a quick note on this. IIUM, where I came from, International Islamic University, was established in 1983. The conference was somewhere in 75 or 76, all right, in Mecca, to decide about two things, Islamic University and Islamic Bank. Okay, and then in 1983, Malaysia took both and started the experiment. So I can say my university is actually an experiment, all right, which has lasted for some time. But maybe sometimes certain experiments, we have to look at it again. And I was fortunate to be part of the experiment in 1985. Now, this whole process was actually in response to ethical issues in knowledge. Okay, if you say Islamization, it's actually ethical issues. Okay, what are some of the ethical issues? The ethical issues is because certain ideological dominance may have caused harm to the society, some kind of oppression, for example. And we know this, it can exist either way, whether you take the welfare approach or whether you take the capitalist approach. Each of them have got its strength, has got its limitations. So it gave birth to an area called Islamic economics, all right, which tried to bring back the concept of nature and nurture, all right, understanding fitrah and universality. Again, that my diagram that I gave earlier. Now, putting this back into frame, all right, it is expected or hope that we can actually, if not eliminate, at least moderate or have some control or give some purpose and direction. So you notice that all these definitions, whether it came from Allahyarham Faruqi, okay, who actually focus on humanity, social sciences, all right, and then there were others who go deeper into belief system and the relationship between man and God. And then also you have a definition that focus on intellectual pursuits, okay, that requires a lot of reasoning and reviewing how we think and so on. Because the early scholars, all right, the early scholars. Recently, we have a visit of a scholar from, a person from Morocco in Malaysia. A lot of controversy, but we didn't pay attention to understand about the Idrisi. And if you do a bit of a Google search, all right, you will realize, now this is your job as university students. When the society is rumbling and rambling and so on, you should raise yourself to the next level. Try to understand history. Try to look from ideological perspective. Then you realize that they had this scholar in Idrisi family who actually came up with the globe and the map of the world. And we missed that part. We were spending too much time on differences. We did not manage to learn from the knowledge that was shared to the Western world, and the Western world has benefited it. And we were just left quarreling among ourselves. So I think sometimes it's important for us to be have a bigger view of the world and see how hikmah or wisdom is being shared throughout. So the intellectual pursuits are very important. Then, of course, mastery of discipline. This one I met our former Al-Irham rector. This is one thing that he kept hammering on us. He said, you have to be an expert in more than one field. It's not enough because you have to master various disciplines. And then, of course, the connection between the achievement of human civilization, divine knowledge as specified by Prof. Kamal Hassan, who's still very much here at Tahajjud, talking about the methodological, because he comes from a very much Sharia background. Because different scholars from different background may share a different insight. Now, one view that I would like to share with you, which is rather universal, all right, is from Al-Attas' view, because he's always concerned about man trapped by his own mind. Okay, in fact, if you read Hussein Al-Attas' work, he talks about the captive mind, all right, the captive mind that become colonial, that become controlled by others, rather than you liberate yourself. So, in other words, man by nature is given that freedom to search, to know his identity, to rebuild himself. So this liberation is very critical. All right, whether is it mythological, whether it is animistic, whether it's natural, cultural. It doesn't mean that you do not conform. It means that you are aware about yourself before you relate to all these various systems. And in that sense, you can do a better. Then the other thing is the language that we use. All right, do the language that we use actually limit us? For example, if I use the word paradigm, does paradigm actually prevent me from thinking other things? Let's take the word terrorist, for example. All right. Now, people say this is a terrorist. But if you are very critical, you say, is he not a freedom fighter? Now, where do you draw the line? Okay. So now you become a very critical mind, okay, to try to distinguish between the two, between truth and falsehood, to have a discerning mind as a researcher. All right, because that's what you want to search for. Otherwise, how are you going to reach wisdom? Okay. Then we talk about the belief system, of course. Okay, which here I talk about sincerity, which is ikhlas, and then the concept of creation itself. If you notice, because our knowledge, our research is very much about the creation. You see, beautifully put in the Quran, we talk about the creator, Khalik. Okay, we talk about the created, makhluk. We talk about the character, khuluq. All right. And the best of character, akhlaq. All from the same root word. Now, do you get that in a language like ethics? No. We just have ethics. Okay, what is the root word of ethics? You go back to Greek or you go back to morality, finish. But if you look at the Arabic Quranic word, it is universal. It linked to the whole creation, actually. Okay, but just one word. Okay, just one word. So it actually can excite you to think, review, be very critical. Yeah. So a man as physical being, of course, we are never always remember. I can't remember what I took for lunch 1 month ago on Saturday, right? On a particular Saturday. Certainly I forget about that. It's not registered unless I'm on a diet. That means unless I condition myself. So this actually starts to tell us about who we are, all right, in terms of our nature. The next thing I'm going to share with you is certain components of Sharia, which later on will have methodological implications. All right. We cannot ignore these three very important elements: the belief system, the fiqh, and the akhlaq. Now, one thing that I feel now that we miss is adab. We have a lot of ilm, a lot of knowledge, maybe a lot of technology, but the adab is missing. So that's why there are a lot of questions about Islamic finance. Why you seem to be not solving the problem that you talk about, or not as effective? Though we make some advancements, but there are still more. So maybe we should start thinking about the adab, the proper way of doing things. All right, and going back to the exemplary conduct of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Iman, Islam, Ihsan, very three important pillars. All right, that you cannot divorce from Islamic economics or even Islamic finance, except that the one that has been given significant focus has always been the fiqh, okay, or the Sharia. All right, not much here, nor here. Okay, but if you're going to focus on akhlaq, then we have to start to look at the adab side, yeah, the adab perspective. Okay, the next thing I'm going to talk about is the research design. Okay, now how do you start thinking of a problem? Now, this one is not so important for you as those who are doing masters and PhD, right? Because in your case, as I always say to my students, all right, at the undergraduate level, most of the time, I ask the question and you answer. At the master's level, I give you the answer, you find the question. At the PhD level, you tell me your question and you tell me your answer. Okay, so you can see the empowerment complete to a doctoral student, because when you come to do a PhD research, you should be knowing what the problem is and you tell me how you're going to solve it. Our job is to guide you to reach your destination. But at undergraduate, we ask you the questions and make sure you can answer. Now, at this final year, you are slowly crossing over. Okay, we give you the answers, you find the questions. For example, I give you a case study, you identify the issues. All right, so I give you all the facts, I give you all the data, you find the issues. Can you find the issues or not? Then you have moved to the next level. All right, so research actually trains you to move from one stage to another. You will not be answering exam questions anymore, but you will be developing research questions. Okay, so that's different, right? Because exam question you can answer because it's already in the textbook. Research question only after you have completed your research, after you have identified the problem and so on. Okay, so it's a different level and different type. So you will be having a mindset change. All right, now this is one thing that I'm sure your university will guide you to move from one who just absorb and then reproduce or analyze to one that actually construct. Okay, you build new knowledge. You try to be part of that process. Okay, so here I just want to say that when you come up with a research, usually you will have a certain philosophical view. You will have how you're going to conduct your strategy, and then later on you will choose your methods. Right? These are further references if you want to look. So the names that I've given to you who have introduced this, what they mean by the worldview or the belief system. So you see, even in Western paradigm, they also talk about belief. All right? When do you believe? Something that is not seen. If something that is seen, why you need to believe? You can see already what? Why you want to believe? Or something in the future that is going to happen. Again, we are limited to time, we are limited to space, we are limited to behavior. So that will shape your belief, how you think about things. But the belief that we are talking about when we talk about the Islamic system is a higher order belief. It's not the belief is just to live your life, but there's an afterlife. All right, so it's a higher order belief. So this higher order belief is something that in Islamic economics and Islamic finance we try to bring in. Then apart from that, okay, we talk about the system itself, the process. Okay, is it systematic? Is it logical? What are the things you need to do? All right, so you have observation. Most of us will do observation. Most of us will do empirical work. When you start to observe, then you will limit your approach to what can be observable. But the question is knowledge only observable? Or they are also non-observable? These are fundamental questions that you have to ask. All right, and don't use different method. One that is not observed and then you want to observe, then you have problem. You create unnecessary problem. Yeah. So the paradigm that we're going to talk about after this is like a picture which we call the portrait of the world. And then we want to solve some problem, all right, through observations, and we use this paradigm, and later on we build some framework. Okay. Now this is a good reference that I like to share with you about how when you start thinking. So the first question you ask is, what is reality? And how do I know this reality? How do I discover this reality? For example, okay, I visit an organization. Okay, so I go to the management and ask, what is the problem about employment or about welfare of the staff in this organization. I ask the management, all right? Now that is one reality. No, I go to the corridor, I see the people who sweep the floor, clean the toilet. I interview them. All right, I will get another view of reality. Okay. Now, do we do that? I speak to the driver who drives the CEO. All right, the driver who drives the chairman. I will get another reality. Now, then I will get a complete picture of what is actually happening in the organization. Sometimes you can call that intelligence gathering. Yeah, that's why intelligence officers in special branches, all that, they do all this work, but they never tell you that methodology. But in qualitative research, that's what you do. Okay, so that means if you talk only about a single reality, then what it means? That means you are doing most likely a quantitative approach. But if there is more than one reality, then most likely you are doing a qualitative approach. Okay, so you notice that the ontological question about what is the reality, okay, is so significant. It will shape your thought process, how you think in your theory, in epistemology, in your perspective that you're going to take, in the method that you're going to use, and finally the sources that you're going to get the information. Okay, so it will influence the kind of data. All right, I give an example. All right, now I'm trained part accounting, part business, yeah, and finance, business, accounting, and finance. That was my doctoral degree in Strathclyde, yeah, business, accounting, and finance. Now, every time when I see students rely on data which is already prepared in database on accounting, I always question. I said, please look at the annual report. Check the data, whether they got it right or not. Because there are some database, sometimes they make mistakes. Okay, so you need to do some validation. Why? Because the difference between the reality of the database and the reality of the financial statement is accounting policy. Okay, what shapes the financial statement is actually institutional and it relates to accounting policy. What shapes the database is the metadata which the database want to provide to you. So you actually can lose some information if you did not look at the annual report, the financial statement. Okay, so that's why you got to be a bit careful. It's okay if you want to rely one or the other, but make sure you have done some validation to ensure some accuracy. Yeah, this happened. I experienced it personally when I was using data stream back in 1993, 92, those days. Yeah. All right, now the pathway. Okay, just to share with you, we just take two only, the first two, which is positive and constructive. All right, so if you take a positive view, that means you have a single objective reality. You are able to measure. All right, and then you will focus more on survey research. All right, maybe you can do a bit of experimental and you'll focus very much on quantitative. But if you have to go down to the ground, we call it grounded research, and build it up, then you are trying to construct something and then you want to interpret. Then you have more than one realities and you have to converge somewhere, all right, or saturate somewhere. Then we have qualitative. So you can see that from here, right? We can highlight that the paradigm and the method are related. That's why the paradigm is important. Okay, and the perspective from ontology, the perspective of epistemology, all these are related. It's not separated. Okay, so if you take a very practical problem, you will have a mix of both. Okay, sometimes you just have mixed methods. Some of us, we are now inclined to what we call action research. I'm okay with that. Now that's under pragmatism. But one thing that you got to be mindful, the action research doesn't actually bring you to the theoretical conclusion. It's very much problem policy oriented because you want to solve the problem. Okay, theoretical means we go back to the theories. Yeah, we go back to the assumptions and then we re-examine these assumptions. Then also those who subject themselves to certain movements. I know some students are very active. You are an activist. Why don't you do research in your active approach? Maybe through green or environment or whatever changes to society. Then you will fall into the critical perspective. That means you want to socially construct it. So here there will be a lot of discourse, a lot of discussion. So that's why when some universities, universities debate. Some universities say, students should not get involved in politics, and then some say students should. I think that is a confusion there. To me, it's not what we mean by you actively participate and campaign. It is the intellectual process, the intellectual maturity, which I think some universities understand this very well and they don't mention it. They just keep quiet, but they guide the student. Now, that maturity is what we want, so that when you become leaders, you can even discuss with your opposition and so on, no problem. Because you have raised your level of understanding for the good of the country, for the good of the society, not for your personal self. Now, these are the problems that we have today, right? Because we become very sectarian, even at the university. But sad to say, if we raise to another level of philosophical understanding, I think we'll have a much, much better place and a much more, I would say, colorful, beautiful politics in our domains, yeah, even in the universities. Now, here I just want to share with you Creswell. Creswell is famous for his mixed method, and some of you have got his book. This is the old version, you can get latest, but I like his quadrant. I like his quadrant in terms of post-positivism, constructivism, participatory pragmatism. Actually, all these are already discussed here, but I just put it for you here so that you can see some coherence within each quadrant, all right, what it takes you, and it will help you in your choice of which method you want to do, yeah? And then, of course, the Karl Popper or Popper's falsification, they have these steps. Now, this is where I always caution, when you do research that relate to Islamic belief system or any belief system, all right? Sometimes you have dogma, sometimes you have doctrine. There are things that you do research to question, yes, but to reaffirm, because it relates to belief. Because either you believe or you don't believe. Okay, that's the very basic premise. Either you believe or you don't believe. But there are things that it's not about either you believe or you don't believe. It's about understanding the phenomena and then relate to your belief. So, for example, I give you an example. For someone who believes in God, in the Creator, knows there is a Creator. So, when they observe the phenomena, they want to understand how this phenomena relate to the Creator, how the creation relate to the Creator. Okay, so by understanding that, he will strengthen his belief, okay, and provide solutions. But if his belief is only how much more money I can make, and then later on cause pollution, and then the society now talk about zero waste and so on, yeah, we are solving actually we are delayed already. We are solving a delayed problem. The problem could have been prevented if we have looked at it properly, yeah. Then we are looking at it from a different perspective. So that's why these steps that we talk about is when you are observing nature to strengthen your belief, not to test your belief. Because that one I can share with you some of the slides of my colleague, Dr. Habibullah, trained in Sharia and Usul and so on. And I managed to get some of his slides and I'm sharing it with you to say that when you read the Quran, for example, or you read religious texts, you will have to have a certain methodology, a certain approach. All right, you cannot begin with doubt. There was one scholar, Al-Ataj, used to say, if I'm thirsty and I have a glass of water, all right, if I want to quench my thirst and I drink that glass of water, I'll be quenched. But if I have doubt about that water and I go and put some salt, then what happens? What happens when you drink seawater? You will die, right? Because that's not what your body wants. And why do you create that doubt? Why do you put that salt? So, and there are certain field of study, you don't create that doubt. But at the same time, you cannot just trust as it is. You have to check, you have to verify. That's why we are asked to think, we are asked to reflect, we are asked to introspect. All these are actually research functions that we do in our mind. Yeah. So here, when we talk about the steps, these are some of the things that we do in research. First, what is the broad problem? Define the statement. Develop hypothesis. If it is quantitative, is qualitative, you don't need to develop hypothesis. You need propositions. Certainly, you need research questions for both. the measures, the collection, analysis, interpretation. Okay? So this whole research process is very, very relevant, all right, and it helps us. But please do not limit to it. Please do not limit to it. Now, the other thing that I have for you is the research process. Okay, most of the time we ask you, what is the problem that you want to look at? If you say it's my personal problem, then I say, why don't you discuss it in your family? Yeah, we don't discuss it in the faculty. What we are looking is a problem that it could be social, economic problem, or academic problem that we want to address. Sometimes, yeah, or student affairs problem. So, but how do you formulate your problem? This is a step by itself. Usually, I take one session just to discuss about how do you formulate a problem. Where do you look for problems? Not look for problem because you want to get into problem, but because you want to find solution. Half solution begins with how you define the problem. Half the solution, yeah? The other half is, of course, to find. So as I said, if I define the problem differently, I will get a different solution. So don't worry about the same literature shared with your friend. Your friend may read the same book, but acquire different knowledge. Okay, because the book is information. It is only knowledge to the author, but you as the reader, you will understand it in your own way. So don't worry. That's why don't worry about sharing materials, sharing academic papers, because each of you are bestowed with your own understanding. Now, this is the most beautiful part of it. Then, of course, the research purpose, objectives, research questions, hypotheses, research method. I'm sure if you have gone through a research course, you have seen all this. So what I've done for you is just to show you that at each stage, there are questions that you got to ask. Okay, so you'll notice that research is a spirit of inquiry, always asking questions, never stop asking questions, but learning to improve and ask the most right, effective, proper, precise questions. Yeah. Now I want to talk about the problem. Okay. So when you think of a problem, all right, you must not think of a problem in isolation. The first question you may ask, is it symptom or is it the actual problem? Someone may have a headache, all right? The diagnosis says, oh, the headache is because he did not sleep enough. The headache because lack of drinking water. The headache because the aircon was turned too low, the oxygen not enough. Not enough oxygen in the blood, so you got a headache. Or the headache because there is a growth. There's a tumor. Now, who's going to tell the difference? If he's not trained as a physician at least 4 to 6 years. And clinical experience too, not just textbook, right? The number of patients they have observed. So in other words, when you do research, you actually are doing experiential learning. It's experiential learning. You have to experience. For those who work with a lot of data, you will understand the data so well. All right, because the more time you spend with the data, the better it is. And that's why I call it the crossover period, all right, between me and the student. Initially, I will be guiding the student. Later on, the student will guide me because he spends more time on the data than I look at the data. So this is where you will notice that research is partnership learning. Research is not lecturer, student, you do this, you do that, then you will just be RA. But if you want to elevate, the student should take more control. You should feel motivated because you are given the opportunity to do research. Then what are the emerging issues? That should be reflected in your problem. And then what is it that you want to analyze? Is it the management? Is it the whole organization? Or is it the product? All right. So in the case of Islamic economics and Islamic finance, all right, what are our unit of analysis? Are you just want to focus on interest rate? Or you want to focus on the governance? What is it? Then the variables, what type of variables, all right? Whether is it most of the time you say independent, dependent variable and so on, but what makes it independent? Can the independent become dependent? Can you change the context? And then how are you going to measure? All right, and then is it deductive or inductive and so on? So all these, I hope, will help you to use as a reference all the time and ask yourself this question, have I covered all this? Before you say, I am clear about my problem. Because if it does, it will be able to address all these corollaries that I've highlighted to you. Okay. So here are some of the questions in terms of how precise your problem statement. Is it feasible? Can you do the research? Is there data? All right, is it just a practical problem, or are you going to go into theoretical problem? Now, this is where for those who are doing academic research, all right, I think at a degree and masters, we can have a mix, but at a doctoral level, we'll emphasize very much on academic research, So we want to see how you have contributed to the theory, how you can advance it. Otherwise, it will just remain a policy research, which can be done by any think tank, okay? But in the university, we want that input. So I usually invite those who have done research in policy to come in and say, okay, why don't we extend this into some new theoretical development? Then we will start to rework at it. Okay, so there are certain things that you may want to understand, you may want to look at it, but this time relating to a particular field of study, relating to a particular theory. Okay, either it is extension, new theory, or application. Then we talk about research purpose. Now, you must, as I said, must have purpose in life, so must have your research purpose. What actually is the direction of your research? Now, one thing you got to bear in mind, if you don't have a purpose, satu tujuan yang jelas, you will keep changing your topic. So, the first week, topic A, and then the 14th week, topic number 14. You keep changing your topic. Why? Because you don't have a direction. All right, this is the problem. Many people, oh, I read this, I get excited, I'm interested, I change to topic B, and then topic C, topic D. Then I say, where are you going to finish your research? All right, so cannot. So that means what? That means you did not read enough on a topic. You have to read deeply in the topic. That's why this one, you have to put a lot of your effort. In fact, this is the one that show to your lecturers, show to your university that you have achieved a university degree of independent thinking. You're able to think on your own. You can make the best decision. That's what we want. To me, every graduate of university is a leader. And we should respect them for that. Give them all the opportunities. Because they are our future, inshallah. I always look at that. So you must have a direction when you do research. So the purpose of research is your direction. Okay. So if I want to study a particular issue or problem, okay, maintain that until you get into it. Don't worry. Again, work with your time. All right. If you have only 3 months, then limit your research scope to only 3 months. So these are some of the different purposes that I've highlighted in the points. You can look at that. And then some of the methodologies of the Muslim philosophers. Now, this one I took from my colleague. So he suggested us to look at some of these early thinkers. Imam Razi, for example, I know he wrote a very good book on Ilmul Akhlaq, the ethics. Al-Ghazali also wrote, but Imam Razi, he's also a medical doctor. See, all these scholars, they are multi-talent. They are philosopher, theologian, some of them mathematician, some of them. So you can imagine, we talk about multi-method, they talk about multi-methodology. They talk about multi-methodology. All right, so there's a lot that we can learn from them if we read carefully their works. This is something that we got to revise. And then, of course, generally we can break into 2, inductive or deductive. For those who like to observe, and these observations are recurring, we say you are doing an inductive work. That means you start with their data. For those who like to theorize, to think about ideas, you are doing deductive work. Okay, both are present in qualitative and quantitative. But most of the time, we think deductive is only for quantitative. But no, deductive is also in qualitative. But at the same time, some people say only quantitative are inductive because you use large data. Again, no, because qualitative also you make observations, so they are also inductive. Except that inductive emphasize recurring observations, which is robustness in quantitative, but saturation in qualitative. I see they have 2 dimensions, because they are looking at it from different. Then you have a combination of both. So the early scholars, they use all these methods. They use these methods. I mean, if you think about Ibn Khaldun, okay, the father of sociology, the West recognizing father of sociology, we don't even talk about them so much. All right, then what happens? He did an anthropological research about civilizations, the birth and death of civilization. In fact, he can predict when the next civilization is going to go bust. Right, like some of now the big shifts of the powers, within Russia, China, and India and America. all this is already inside. If we take the trouble to look at Ibn Khaldun's theories, we can understand better. But sometimes we just limit to current indicators. We never do develop new indicators. Yeah. So again, the methods that are used by different scholars I've put here, whether is it Shafi'i, Hanafi. Now, for those of you who are familiar about Hanafi and Maliki, do you know who is their teacher? One of their teachers, Ja'far al-Sadiq. Ja'far al-Sadiq is a teacher to Maliki as well as Hanafi. And what struck me very interesting is both of these students take two different approaches, although they learn from the same teacher. All right. One took a very much rational school, the other one takes a very much textual school. Okay, but we lose this chain of knowledge. Somehow we lose. We become sectarian. I just Hanafi, I just Maliki. You know, we never see the whole thing. We miss it. But I think as graduates, as intellectuals, I think we should allow. Maybe the general public, don't confuse. Let them focus on whatever that they can do daily. But as intellectuals, I think there's a lot of knowledge that we can benefit and learn. Inshallah. Then, of course, the integrated approach. These are some scholars that are cited by my colleague. I don't want to leave this out. And I'm sure you've heard of Shatibi talking about Maqasid Sharia and so on. So if you read about a scholar, don't just read only one or two books. If you can, you follow through. Okay, all the books, a few of the books that they have read. Then I think you can appreciate and understand where they are coming from. Yeah, and how they decide or what kind of tools of research they have used in their writing. Now, these are further just highlights about the methods that they use. So you can see there are universal methods, whether they use descriptive, whether they use comparative study, or they use analytical. Okay, for example, if we talk about qiyas, all right, which is analogy, all right, a lot is being used now, especially when we want to relate to socio-political, we want to relate to mu'amalat. All right, especially now we might migrate from trade to finance. A lot of analogical arguments are being used. So certainly we have to look at this as well, right? And then there's also the historical method. All right, so I was quoting about Ibn Khaldun. And then when we study hadith, for example, I'm always surprised why we never talk about the event at that time, right? In the Quran, we have Asbabun Nuzul, why the verses. But in the hadith, when he was talking about, especially for the mutawatir, who was present? What context was it? You know, I was asking my colleagues a question during the migration, the hijrah. All right. Now, if any of you know, please share. I like to learn about this. Was there anything narrated exactly when the Prophet left Mecca to arrive Medina? The whole journey, was it recorded? Okay. Somehow there's a blackout, except for a visit to a house where the one who gave them some kind of support in the sense of milk and so on, and the milk from the lamb became very, very productive and so on. But other than that, I don't seem to get the series of events when it's such a very important event, and it was not just one night or one day. All right, so history, I think, plays a very important role. How we record history, how we capture it, and how we share. And then inductive methods. All right, deductive, I already mentioned, descriptive, analytical, and then sources, hierarchy, text, all right, what is agreed upon, right? For example, we talk about Jumhur, then we want to refer. So again, you must have the maratib, the order, especially when you look at Sharia sources, yeah? This is very much Sharia sources, okay? Again, if you look at Quran, Sunnah, Ijma, Qiyas, I've just mentioned to you about Qiyas. And then Ijma, of course, here we talk about collective opinion, collective wisdom, and whether there is really an ijma or is it a constructive ijma. I think these are something that the jurists discuss. So what I'm just saying here is some of these are sources, but some in itself is a methodology. For example, what is the best tafsir of the Quran? Okay, the answer is the Quran itself. The Quran gives the best tafsir to it. So if you read one verse, you can get the understanding from the next verse that explain the verse before that. In fact, there is a study now of Quran, they call it the symmetrical study. Very interesting, they describe the Quran like an onion. All right, that means whatever that was discussed earlier, you will see how it will, the argument or the parable is closed in the later stage. It's a symmetrical study. In other words, even the Quran itself have got methodological approaches. We can learn new methodologies by learning the Quran and also the Sunnah and Ijma and so on. Then, of course, our focus now is very much on maslahah, or is it on uruf, which is custom and usage, or how to solve problems, all right, especially when there are blockages. Here, blockages, that means then we do takhrij. Takhrij is what we do a lot in Islamic finance. That's why you have hila and so on. It is supposed to be a short-term solution, but it became long-term. Why? Because not enough research. Our research house is still not strong enough. I raised this to the central authority. I had an interview with them a couple of days back, and I indicate to them, I think one of our governance issue is Sharia research, not audit, not compliance, not because if we don't do research, we're not moving so far. Okay? And whether we are doing the research that we should be doing, I think these are the questions that we got to ask. This is just to give you specific references to the Quran, all right? Because the word Quran, of course, came from Iqra, which is the first syllable that was mentioned to the Prophet during Revelation, all right? And then, of course, it is not something that will change. It is not human speech. We describe that as God's speech. It is important for remembrance. Now, maybe I can highlight something about the importance of this. You see, in Surah Al-Imran, if you read Surah Al-Imran, the last 10 verses, this is a good practice for those who wake up early in the morning. الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم ويتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض ربنا ما خلقت هذا باطلا سبحانك فقنا عذاب النار صدق الله العظيم. So that verse simply says that your state of remembrance, all right, precedes your state of thinking. If you think without remembrance, you can get lost. You need to be guided. That also can form a basis of naqli and aqli. All right. So in other words, when we say we are thinking, you have Edward de Bono, lateral thinking, all that are very good. Critical thinking, no problem. But in which context? I think this is very fundamental. So when we discuss about Islamic economics or Islamic finance or any, we need to put in a frame of remembrance of the Creator. Then you begin. If you just think for your own personal interests and not for others, we have a problem as well. Okay. But if you think within what you are designed and created for, then you can understand clearly that this thinking is guided, and this thinking will have a very meaningful purpose and at a high order. Yeah. All right. These are some of the methods that have been introduced in the Quran. All right. Sometimes the Quran make it very specific. Sometimes it can be general. Yeah. So there are some examples here that my colleague has already added for me. All right. In this case, with regard to inheritance. All right. Even in inheritance, all right, we call it fara'id. It is not just, oh, I want to give it to my cat, or I want to give it to my dog, or I like my friend, I give. No, it doesn't work that way. Because the concept of family or institution, all right, begins with marriage right up to inheritance. To preserve the family, to build the family. And furthermore, this family is only not in this world. This family will also be connected, the family who has passed away in Alam Barzakh. And that's why we still make dua to them, we still make prayers. And yesterday I talked about the son who continued to pray for their parents. All right. So it's still connected. So we are actually a big family. All right. When we all see together in one space, from Adam right up to the last man on earth. We are actually a very big family. So this awareness is very important. Then there's no reason for us to hate because we are all a family together, right? Especially mankind. Then, of course, when you go into the dhanni, there are multiple interpretations, then you can subject to further discussion as well. So there are some that are very specific. Some are that are hukmi, which is actually the law itself, is an injunction. There are some that actually demonstrate to you what is the best conduct and so on. Okay. Okay, now I go to the domains. I got what? I already exceeded already, yeah? Sorry, 2 minutes. May I take another 3 minutes? Yeah, I'll try to finish in.
Yeah, please continue with until you finish your presentation. It's alright.
All right. No, I hope I don't bore everybody. Sometimes one kata you just enjoy talking only. Yeah. Now, the domains of Islamic finance. Now, we went through a few rounds, especially in ICFI. ICFI is an association that we set up, and some of our Indonesian universities are members of this International Council of Islamic Finance Educators. Yeah? We call ourselves. So we went through many rounds to discuss what are the subject domains. So naturally, this will be the knowledge, and the research will be to contribute to this. So some of us would say we talk about Sharia and so on. I put it together as Islamic sciences, all right? Because that make us to think intellectually, spiritually, all right, and try to integrate where possible. That's why we have Aqidah, Sharia, and Akhlaq. Then we have the economics, right, which you're all in your strength, and I'm sure you are more expert than me to tell me what is happening current now. Then you have the Muamalah, okay, very much the juristic, very much legalistic. That's why we talk about Sharia compliance and so on. It's already in Muamalah. Then the legal, the finance itself, where we talk about valuation most of the time and pricing. The management sciences, how we make decisions, accounting, and information technology. Yeah. So we can look at this later. And now integrating the discipline, especially I want Islamic economics, Islamic finance. What do? I think we have to look at this article. I've put for you some references there. In terms, are we looking at just within a discipline or multidisciplinary, cross-disciplinary? We start touching each other. Interdisciplinary, we're going to get closer, and then transdisciplinary. Okay, these are some of the stages. So when we do research, sometimes it's good to be aware. Am I just looking at one discipline? Okay, I'm just looking at economics. That's it. Or I'm now looking at socio-economics, socio-legal. All right? Or I'm looking at more than that. Okay, so these are some of the questions that sometimes is good for us to ask when we do research. Yeah. So I just give you a simple example. Okay, what happens if you do multidisciplinary versus interdisciplinary? Yeah. Now, for those who do multidisciplinary, we are always focused on problem solving. As a consultant myself, when I was with Amani, I would do consulting work and so on. We will focus on the problem, but I will bring my team. Okay, I got someone from Sharia, someone from economics. Okay, let's discuss together and solve this problem. But each of us are still in our own discipline. We don't have anything common except the problem, but we have different solutions. Now that will be a multidisciplinary. That's why if you do MBA programs and so on, you spend a lot on multidisciplinary solutions. But when you start doing MSc, you start doing PhD, you are going into interdisciplinary. Okay, what is the difference now? The first one, you focus on the common problem. The second one, you focus on the common assumptions. All right, that's the one that put you together. Okay, the common assumptions. So now it becomes interdisciplinary. Okay, now with common assumptions, you can build new theories. All right, let's take, for example, insurance. Okay, what is insurance? To me, it's fund management. Okay, you'll be surprised. I reduce it so much, and the people from insurance will be very upset. Although I'm with the insurance industry for about 8 years, with Takaful and Retakaful company. Okay, but they are happy with it when I criticize and I say, no, you're just fund management. However, you are fund management to protect. All right, your objective is protection. That's why you build insurance. What is your basis? Pooling of risk. So what's the difference? I said Takaful, you talk about sharing risk. Is that not pooling of risk? Is the same as insurance? You're still pooling of risk. So the economics is the same actually, but the legality is different. Where's the difference? Okay, in the case of insurance, risk is transferred. What risk? Not the physical risk, the financial risk, because it's the financial outcome. Okay, nobody can prevent fire from happening. But if it happens, what is the loss? You have peril, you have hazard. Right? But in the case of Takaful, what happened? You don't transfer the risk. You share the risk. Okay, how you share the risk? Based on the principle of mutuality. So you see, you look at the same problem, which is a peace of mind, but you have different approaches. So what do you have? A multidisciplinary approach. Okay, so from a multidisciplinary, you can dissect the problem and you can understand it separately, and then you can try to put it back together. Okay, You can put it back together. Just like I give you the problem of the traffic jam, right? The engineer will look at it differently, the social scientist will look at it differently, and so on. Yeah, the urban experts will look at it differently, but you can put it together. But when you are talking about new theories, all right, you always go back to assumptions. You go back to the assumptions. How robust is the assumption? Do we need to revisit the assumption? That's why when I talk about problematization, actually I'm looking at assumptions. Now, I don't want to discuss that here because this will be at the next level. But just to highlight to our budding students, right, and say that at least you are aware that there is a difference between interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary. Of course, there is a host more of approaches here. Yeah. All right. The future progression of Islamic economics and research. Okay, I can finish now. Okay, sorry, I exceeded 8 minutes already. So, though Islamic economic and finance research resides within the domains of economic and finance, that one we cannot deny, because that's where the ideas germinate. Okay, but certainly we have to extend beyond, because there is a higher order purpose. Okay, and then don't exclude, make it inclusive. Let's have more discussion. Okay, and maybe we can learn from universal wisdom. And then the other thing is we need to relate to belief system. In this case, we talk about the Tawhidic paradigm and the Sharia lenses. Yeah. So this will be a perspective that for others want to consider. But for the Muslims, they will build this perspective or their perspective. And the basic objective is we want to move from mafsada to maslahah. We want to move from zulm to adil. All right, from darkness to light. That's what it is. Simple. And benefit humanity. So there wouldn't be a reason why we want to stop this. In fact, we should share and encourage. So inshallah, in this spirit, I hope that learning, knowledge and wisdom will facilitate research to be purposive, meaningful and beneficial to humanity. Allahu alam. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Prof. Musa, for your presentation. And now we enter the discussion session. Actually, I have kind of lot of questions, but I forgot that I'm the moderator, so I have to. Yeah,
we can have a
Yeah.
private session, no problem. Yeah, later on. No problem.
yeah, I have
please.
to give the chance first to the participant.
Yeah, please.
Jadi teman-teman yang ada
Yeah.
pertanyaan, silakan boleh
Please.
ditanyakan.
Yeah.
Bisa di raise hand atau boleh ditulis di kolom chat, saya bantu bacakan. Maybe while we wait for
You ask,
question
you
from
start
participants.
first.
Yeah. I have some question first.
I wanted to prepare a quiz, for the student before start, but couldn't. Otherwise from the quiz I can discuss what is in their mind, but now never mind. Okay, please. Yeah.
Maybe we can have another session in the future.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Maybe physical session.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Please. Yeah.
So my question is, some student usually offers topic of research that is refused by their supervisor. I think we have two perspective here. First, from as a student, how can we convince our supervisor that our problems is worthy to be solved, and from the perspective of the supervisor, how can we put ourselves to our students' point of view so that we can know what actually what our student wants to solve?
Okay, thank you for this question. I think I still have that problem. Every time a student come into the methodology class, yeah, they start with the topic. By the time they finish the course, they change the topic. Yeah. Now, I think what you're saying here is the meeting of minds. Yeah, in Arabic we say majlis. Yeah? Meeting of minds between the student and the supervisor. One way is, you see, to me, undergraduate, we need more guidance for them. Yeah, at the postdoctoral, they're left very much on their own. It's good for the lecturers or the potential supervisors to list down their topics that they want to supervise. Yeah. So that the student can look at those topics close to their heart, and then they will select. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly topic. It could be an area, it could be an issue, and then from there it will faster the process. Yeah, because one thing that we need to recognize that undergraduate students, I think we want to teach them how to use their tools for the research, more than try to come up with a brilliant topic. But there will be some who can do that. And if they do, I think give special attention. Yeah, this is the opportunity for you to groom future lecturers, because certainly there will be a person. I see this in UK when I was there in Scotland. They actually identify in the honors year, maybe 4 or 5. These are our future professors. They can see already. So they prepare them. In our case, sometimes we lose to the industry, we miss the opportunity. So, but generally, I think we can guide them by saying, okay, these are the areas, and maybe some initial readings, and see whether for them to discuss with you, at least they are serious to read the article that you give them. Then you build up the topic for them to do research. So in that sense, they will feel a sense of belonging, that this topic is also theirs, that they want to do research. At the same time, the supervisor also is comfortable with the topic and can guide the student to complete it successfully, inshallah. Yeah. I hope that is helpful. Yeah.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
Prof. Musa. Any other question from the participant? Silakan yang mau ada pertanyaan.
Bahasa Indonesia pun boleh.
Bahasa Indonesia juga tidak apa-apa.
Assalamualaikum, Mas Kirin.
Salam.
Oh, Waalaikumsalam, Pak Anas. Yes, please, your question, Pak.
Alhamdulillah. Assalamualaikum, dear Prof.
Salam lah. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. My name is Anas, Prof, from Social Science from University Science Malaysia, Prof.
Oh, USM. Okay. Right.
I'm sorry, Prof, I cannot on my camera because in the travel here.
Okay, no problem. Right, safely.
Okay, Prof, thank you. Prof, I have 2 questions actually.
Yeah.
First of all, what do you think, Prof? The goals of Islamization of economics, is it to Islamize the theory in economics and conventional, or is it we have to instead of attempting to Islamize conventional economics, how if we could be able to offer another layer to it? I mean, conventional economics, the theory of conventional economics is already settled, and we have a lot of theory there. What do you think? What do you think? I mean, what is the goal of Islamization in economic sector in Islam in economics? Is it to Islamize the economics, or to provide another layers to conventional economics? I mean, we work hand in hand. We have conventional economic and we have Islamic economics, or we want to Islamize the conventional economic. What is the goals actually in your opinion, bro? Okay. And second question is how we know that pandemic is already, alhamdulillah, we passed pandemic, but we have because of pandemic we have a method that, for example, bro, when we doing the interview, now we habit to do online interview, for example, or in FGD we have a virtual group discussion.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you think, Prof, this method dapat diteruskan with apa meskipun pandemic is already over?
Yeah.
What is the validity and validitasnya, Prof?
Yeah.
I mean. Ya, terima kasih, Prof.
Reliability itu, ya?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Can we continue this method even though the pandemic is over?
Okay.
Thank you, Prof. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you. Salamullah. I think the first question is about the goals of Islamization of economics. Yeah, that's the first one, and the second is about the methodology that we use. Like, for example, focus group discussion (FGD). Can we still continue with the present platform like Zoom and so on, or should we be physical? In terms of validity. Okay, let me try the first one. Now, the first one, I think the best person to answer is my colleague, Professor Aslam. I'm sure you must have heard of Professor Muhammad Aslam. I think he eat, he drink, he sleep with Islamic economics. Okay, he's very much into it. Okay, I mean, every time I meet with him, I think we like to quarrel. Okay, good quarrel, because that's the only way we can learn from each other. Now, if I'm to respond to that topic, I will respond it from accounting finance, yeah, because accounting finance relate to economics. Now, one thing that I think Islamic economics has established itself is to relate to the worldview, all right, and to recognize the need for an economic system. And today we have the financial system, the Islamic financial system. We have the governance and so on. So in that sense, these ideas, these germinating ideas it gives a good catalyst, it gives a good start. But whether we actually have evolved, for example, like Islamic political economy, significantly, I think this is the question. Whether we have provide adequate solution, this is the question. So that's one thing that I feel. Yes, maybe some initial work still got to continue to look at some of the verses and of the Quran, and then relate to economic ideas and do some what you call sieving or being improvised. Now, whether you maintain a separate approach altogether and say, okay, leave the conventional economics, we come up with an alternative solution, it can be very daunting, right? It can even slow you down, because you don't leverage on universal wisdom, right? But at the same time, if we know history, okay, let me give you a third approach. If you know history, where these ideas came from, and for all you know, it came from the Muslim scholars, all right, and we read the same book, I think we can find a better solution, all right? Now, the problem is we lost our trail. Then we can come up with a better solution. The challenge is they don't indicate. They will just go back to the Abrahamic traditions at most. And they will talk about, there's one book which they like to refer from the classical. Yeah. Now, that's another approach. Now, do we need to provide all the time a different solution? I don't think so. All right. I give an example, the experience of EOFI. Yeah. EOFI, I don't know whether you heard of EOFI, Accounting Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institution, which is based in Bahrain. I had the opportunity to be with them in '97, developing standards, reporting standard, accounting, auditing, governance standards for Islamic bank. And then later on, they developed Sharia standards. Now, Sharia standards are more important because they are more widely adopted and so on. So when they discussed this, all right, they had these three approaches. The first approach is, of course, to come out purely from the Quran and Sunnah. Second is to take the conventional accounting standard and make the changes. The third one is historical. Of course, they didn't mention the third one because I know the scholar who was pursuing for this approach. So what happened was we took the existing, we make changes. We have a challenge. We have a challenge. Why? Sometimes we are limited by the assumptions. We did not build our own new principles or assumptions. This is where we can get limited. Yeah, but I agree with you. Yes, there could be another layer, another approach, but it has to be connected. It cannot be disconnected, because then you can see comparison. I think I'm beginning to read one of your, I think Adi Setia. Yeah, Adi Setia. All right, I'm sure you have heard of Adi Setia, who writes about livelihood and taking another perspective of Islamic economics. Yeah,
Islamic economy, bro.
Yes.
Economy Islamic.
Yeah. So I like his approach, right? I like his approach because he brings the traditional. Now that's good too. For me, whichever you have, proceed. But let's do it systematically and let's compare and be inclusive. Okay, the second part of your question about do we continue? Okay, let me share you my personal experience. I enjoy online with my graduate student, but my universities tell me go back to physical. Okay, but very difficult for me to adjust again.
Okay, bro.
Yeah, but for FDG, I would say both have got strength. If you want to observe non-verbal, all right, in the situation, in the context of the office, because in qualitative, even the time, the place, the sentiment are important in your protocol. And all this will be shut out when you do online. Because online, you just see them physically. However, online, you can use chat, you can use various others to see their online response. So you can have a good combination of both. That's my response. Yeah? Okay. Sorry, if already exceeded already. 53 now. Yeah.
Baik, Prof. Terima kasih sekali, Prof.
Sama-sama. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I think we have another time for one more question,
Okay.
if there is any question, or if I may ask another question.
Yeah, please.
Okay. One problem with okay. We have another participant. Please,
Okay.
Bu Indri.
Indri, yeah, please.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
First of all, I would like to, I am sincerely appreciate your presentation, Dr. Rashad Musa. I'm absorbing more knowledge from you. And my question is, as you mentioned before, that in doing or conducting a research, we have to engage with the practitioner. But in the reality, for myself especially, it's really challenging, or maybe I can say it's difficult to engage with them, especially in a qualitative method with in-depth interview, because the reality, they have a busy schedule, so it's not easy to come up and asking for a deep in-depth interview with them. But especially for the and Wakaf research, there is no secondary data that we can conducting in quantitative research. So the option is we have to conduct it qualitative research with in-depth interview or primary data. So my question is how we can easily conduct it a research on zakat and wakaf.
Basically, it's a question of industry engagement. Yeah, so that when you are able to link with them, they will respond to you, right? Especially to your survey or your interview, your question. Am I correct? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is, you don't have secondary data, so you have to generate primary data, right?
Yeah. But it's really difficult to ask them.
Understand.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we have that all the time. Now, my advantage is I sit in their committees. Yeah, I sit in their shadow committees. I sit in the board of directors at one point in time. So I had the opportunity to visualize what is going at the back of their mind. Yeah, when they were making decisions and what kind of issues were raised. So I was able to bring that back to class. And then later on in the research, we can ask the more specific questions rather than general questions. So that when you are able to develop more specific questions, you will be able to get their response because they know this question is very relevant to them. It's just that nobody asked them. But since you ask them, they will be so happy to respond to you. Okay, so that's one technique that I can share with you. So what you need to do is, okay, you can invite them to the university for an event, all right, maybe. And then during that, you have a roundtable session to discuss. But during that roundtable, you learn what is their concern, what is their interest. Then you develop the questions which they want to answer based on their interest. then you begin the first engagement already. All right, that means you are of the same mind. Otherwise, they say, oh, this is academic, nothing to do with me. They always like to say that, they say this is academic, this is very high level. When they start talking that, I know already, they are not so interested because I spend many years with them, in fact, the regulators and so on. But for us, these are important. But to them, we should ask the questions that they are willing, they are interested to answer. But we can give our interpretation later on. Okay, so there is a skill to that, there is an art to that. But certainly, I would say don't find it too difficult because it's a learning curve. And once you start with one, you will see again with others. I know they are very busy, but they are busy doing what they like to do. So if you include your agenda as what they want to do, they will not be busy. They want to do your questions. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dr.
All
Satmus.
right, all right. I wish you all the best, inshallah. Yeah, and the support. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
thank you, Prof.
Okay. Thank you. Right.
And maybe if there is any other last question. So yeah, I was wondering actually about one problem with the Islamic economic
Okay.
Disciplines that since we start with beliefs, since we start with the religion,
Yes.
sometimes the academic community deem the Islamic economics is less scientific than the normal economics. So how can we put up with this problem to ensure that our study, our research is it's also scientific. Even though have different point of view from the normal economics.
True. True. So usually we will share common methods, right, of doing research, so that you see that the universality of the methods and so on. But we may be different on the problem that we want to solve. We may be different from the problem. Okay, I give you a simple example. Yesterday, I showed the efficiency equity argument and the opportunistic behavior. Okay, so the conventional finance is concerned about opportunistic behavior, which is an ethical issue, right? But then they try to solve with efficiency, right? But they later on realized there are limits to the different. In fact, if you look at efficiency study, there are technical, technological, allocative, productive, different types of efficiencies. So they came out with a whole range of efficiencies. But did they actually solve the problem or not? Maybe part of the problem. Now, we should master what they do to communicate with them. Okay, that's why we should get our papers also in the journal, right? Not just among us only. But at the same time, all right, we can slowly introduce to them alternate views or more refined approach to what they are doing. Okay. Now, the question that is limited to them is they are only concerned with the observable. Okay. That means the empirical. That's fine. But we need to show them it doesn't end there. Where does this lead to? Because when you go into policy formulation, there is a lot of normative premise before you make policies, yeah, and this they suddenly just kept quiet because they assume it's generally accepted. But in our case, we have some peculiarities. Wallah alam. I know it's a bit complex that I respond to you, but we start where they are, then we engage with the additional. So the belief is with us, but the method is a lot we can share with them. No problem. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very
Thank
much,
you, thank you
Musa, for
very
your
much.
answer.
Sure.
And I believe some of us are willing to continue the discussion further, but unfortunately, we have limited time. So I think this will be the end of our discussion today. But before we end our discussion, do you have any closing statement for today's session?
Okay, Alhamdulillah, maybe a short one. I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you, Brother Dandi Alif. Yeah, maybe Bapak Dandi. Yeah. Are you married already with children or no?
Not yet, Prof.
Belum lagi. Oh, kena banyak
Belum
doa.
lagi.
Kena banyak doa. InsyaAllah. So really, I value this opportunity, and I really look forward if there are for further discussions, because my faculty is now making a tour in Jakarta. I think they are visiting 6 universities or something. But I told them about our session, and they are willing to communicate and extend further as well, insyaAllah. So thank you so much, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Professor.
Salam.
And for the participant, before you leave, please fill in the attendance form I have shared on the chat box. And we will meet again in other opportunities in 3 in 1. Thank you,
InsyaAllah.
and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Prof. Musa. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Salam. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Said. Assalamualaikum.
Salam.